And to my granddaughter, Alison, I bequeath the entirety of my remaining estate, including the house, all financial accounts, and personal effects. Gerald, the family lawyer, cleared his throat, his gaze flicking to me for a fraction of a second before settling on my sister. My name is Zaylee, by the way, and the woman whose will was just read, Lucille, was more like a mother to me than my actual mother ever was. She practically raised me. My own mother, Sonia, placed a cool hand on my arm. "Oh, Zaylee, honey, we knew this might happen." Grandma wasn't herself at the end. Her voice was syrupy sweet, the kind that always set my teeth on edge. Melvin, my father, nodded, his expression a carefully constructed mask of sorrow. "Dementia, sweetheart. It's a terrible thing. She loved you, of course, but her mind, it was gone." He patted my other arm, a gesture that felt more like a dismissal than comfort. Alison, my dear older sister, dabbed at a perfectly dry eye with a lace-trimmed handkerchief. "It's such a shock," she murmured, though her lips twitched upwards at the corners, a tiny, almost imperceptible smirk. "I'll take good care of everything, of course, for Grandma." She shot a triumphant little glance at Sonia, who gave a minuscule nod. The air in Gerald's stuffy office felt thick, unbreathable. My lungs burned. "Nothing?" I finally managed, my voice a hoarse whisper that barely sounded like my own. "She left me." "Nothing?" Gerald shuffled his papers, the sound loud in the sudden silence. "The will is quite clear, Zaylee. Signed and witnessed. Your grandmother was deemed of sound mind at the time of signing, according to the medical assessments attached." He avoided my gaze, focusing on a spot on the mahogany desk. "Sound mind," I repeated, a bitter, incredulous laugh escaping me. It sounded harsh, ugly. "She called me 3 times a week, every week until you all said her phone was too confusing for her." We talked for hours. She remembered every birthday, every little story I told her about work, about my friends. She remembered the name of my damn cat. Sonia's grip tightened on my arm, her nails digging in slightly. "Zaylee, please, don't make a scene. This is difficult enough for everyone." "Difficult?" I pulled my arm away, turning to face them. I looked at Alison, who was now examining her perfectly manicured nails, that small, smug smile playing on her lips more openly now. "It doesn't look too difficult for some of us." Alison sighed dramatically, a put-upon expression crossing her face. "Honestly, Zaylee, must you always be so dramatic? Grandma made her choices. We have to respect them." "Respect them?" My voice rose, fueled by a sudden surge of adrenaline. "Or did you help her make them? Did you whisper in her ear how awful I was?" Melvin stepped forward, his face flushing. "That's enough, Zaylee. Your grandmother was ill. She was confused. She told us you didn't visit enough, that you were too busy with your own life to care about an old woman. Lies, every word a poisoned dart. I practically lived at Grandma's apartment, especially after Grandpa passed. I did her shopping, took her to appointments, sat with her for hours just watching old movies. Sonia and Melvin were the ones who were always too busy, always had a convenient excuse. Alison hadn't willingly spent more than an hour with Grandma in years, unless it was a holiday where presents were involved. "We should go," Sonia said briskly, already turning towards the door. She gave me a pointed look. "Thank you, Gerald. We'll be in touch about the probate." "Yes, thank you," Alison chirped, practically bouncing in her designer heels. She couldn't get out of there fast enough, probably to start mentally spending her newfound fortune. As they swept out, I lingered for a moment. I glanced back at Gerald. He still wouldn't meet my eyes. That was the first tiny crack in their perfectly constructed facade, the first hint that something was deeply, terribly wrong. The drive to Grandma Lucille's house was a blur of choked-back sobs and a cold, simmering anger that was starting to burn through the shock. My parents and Alison had ridden together, no doubt already divvying up the spoils in their minds. I drove my own car, the old, reliable sedan Grandma had helped me buy when I got my first real job. "Every independent woman needs her own wheels, Zaylee Bean," she'd said, winking. Her house. It still smelled of her. Lavender, old books, and the faintest hint of the lemon polish she used on the antique furniture. Every corner held a memory, a piece of my childhood, my adolescence, my entire life. Her teaching me to knit in that worn armchair, the two of us giggling over silly black and white movies in the den, the sunny kitchen where she'd let me make a glorious mess, experimenting with cookie recipes. They'd given me a few hours to collect any personal mementos I wanted before Alison officially took possession. The generosity was astounding, wasn't it? Like tossing scraps to a beggar. I bypassed the living room, the kitchen. My feet, heavy as lead, carried me straight to her bedroom. It was neat. Too neat. Sonia's sterile touch was already evident, but Grandma's essence lingered, her unique scent strongest here. I sat on the edge of her bed, the patchwork quilt she'd painstakingly stitched years ago soft beneath my fingers. How could she do this? How could the woman who taught me about unconditional love, who swore I was her special girl, her ray of sunshine, just cut me out? Dementia? It didn't feel right. It felt orchestrated, utterly, sickeningly wrong. My eyes scanned the room, her dressing table with its silver-backed brush set, her overflowing bookshelf, then the closet. Grandma loved hats and scarves, and she kept them in old, beautiful hat boxes stacked on the top shelf. I reached up, pulling one down, a faded floral one I remembered her using to store her prettiest silk scarves. It was surprisingly heavy. Inside, nestled amongst a cloud of dried lavender sachets, her signature scent, the one that always made me feel safe, was not a hat, nor scarves. It was a book, a simple cloth-bound journal with a little ribbon bookmark. Not the kind she usually kept for appointments or garden notes. This one looked secret. My heart began to pound, a frantic drum against my ribs. I'd never seen it before. With trembling fingers, I lifted it out. The comforting scent of lavender clung to it, a ghostly perfume. I sat back on the bed, the hat box on my lap, the diary in my hands. It felt warm, almost alive. I hesitated for a moment, a wave of guilt washing over me. This was private. This was Grandma's innermost thoughts. But then, the image of Alison's smirk, Sonia's cold, dismissive hand, Melvin's carefully rehearsed sympathy. They had violated every private, sacred bond we had. They had made everything public, hadn't they? My grief and confusion warred with a rising tide of suspicion. I opened it to the first page. The handwriting was unmistakably Grandma Lucille's, a little shakier than I remembered from her last birthday card, but undeniably hers. The date at the top of the page was just 3 weeks before she died. My breath hitched. My vision swam. They won't stop. The entry began, the ink slightly smudged as if by a tear. Sonia, Melvin, even Alison. They keep telling me Zaylee doesn't care, that she's just waiting for my money, that she never visits anymore. They say she sold the little gold locket I gave her for her 16th birthday. My heart breaks, but I know my Zaylee. I know her. She wouldn't. Or would she? They are so convincing, so very, very convincing. I feel so alone. The words blurred. Tears I hadn't realised I was holding back streamed down my face, hot and angry, dripping onto the delicate paper. This wasn't dementia. This was something else, something calculated, something monstrous. I slammed the diary shut, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold it. The locket. They'd told her I sold her the locket? It was in my jewellery box, tucked away safely, the one Grandma Lucille had fastened around my neck herself, her fingers surprisingly nimble for her age, her eyes sparkling. "A little piece of my heart to keep with yours, Zaylee Bean," she'd whispered. I scrambled back to my tiny apartment, the diary clutched to my chest like a shield. The air in Grandma's house had suddenly felt poisonous, every shadow seeming to hold the smug faces of my family. I locked my door, drew the blinds, and then, only then, did I open the diary again. Page after page, Grandma Lucille's elegant script, sometimes firm, sometimes wavering, painted a picture so horrific it made my stomach churn. October 12th. Sonia came today. She said Zaylee called, upset about having to help me with my groceries last week. Said Zaylee told her I was becoming a burden. A burden? My Zaylee? It can't be true. But Sonia looked so sincere, so worried for me. A strangled sob escaped me. I hadn't called Sonia. I'd enjoyed helping Grandma with her groceries, our little weekly ritual. We'd always get ice cream afterwards. October 19th. Melvin was here. He said Zaylee was asking about my finances, wondering when she'd get her inheritance. He said she was worried I'd spend it all before. He looked so sad when he told me, like he was protecting me from my own granddaughter. My blood ran cold. I'd never once asked about her money, never. I had a job, I paid my own bills. The thought was repulsive. October 25th. Alison visited. First time in months. She brought flowers, lilies. My least favourite, they smell like funerals. She kept saying how tired I looked, how confused I seemed. She told me Zaylee was planning a long trip abroad, wouldn't be around to help anymore. Said Zaylee thought I should move into a home. A home! This is my home. I could almost hear Alison's saccharine voice, dripping with false concern. The lies were so blatant, so cruel, designed to chip away at Grandma's confidence in me, in herself. November 2nd. They took my phone. Sonia said the screen was too small, that I was straining my eyes. She gave me a new one, a simple one, but it only has their numbers programmed in. She said it was for emergencies. I miss Zaylee's calls. I miss her voice. My calls, the ones that suddenly stopped going through. The ones where Sonia would answer, her voice clipped, saying Grandma was resting or not up to talking. The grief that had consumed me since the will reading was still there. A raw, gaping wound. But now something else was mixing with it, something hot and sharp. Rage. A pure, undiluted fury that settled deep in my bones, chilling me even as it burned. Grandma Lucille wasn't demented. She was trapped, isolated, systematically gaslighted by the very people who should have been caring for her. November 10th. I tried to call Mr. Henderson, my old bank manager, today, just to check on things. Sonia overheard. She was furious, said I was being paranoid, that she and Melvin were handling everything perfectly. She said if I kept acting like this, they'd have to get doctors involved, for my own good. I'm scared, Zaylee. I'm so scared. But I love you. Never, ever doubt that. Tears streamed down my face, blurring the words. My poor, brave Grandma, fighting them alone. And then, a few pages later, a different kind of entry. November 15th. I have to be clever. They think I'm just a confused old woman. But I'm not. Not yet. I remember what your grandfather always said. Have a plan B, Lucille. Always have a plan B. I need to protect Zaylee. They won't get everything. I spoke to that other lawyer, the one I found online, Mr. Russell. He seemed to understand. I'm trying to set up something separate, something they can't touch. A different bank. It's so hard. They watch me all the time. A flicker of hope ignited amidst the rage. A plan B. Another lawyer. Mr. Russell. I read on, my fingers tracing her words, feeling her fear, her determination, her unwavering love for me. She wrote about small acts of defiance, hiding her good jewellery, pretending to forget conversations to gauge their reactions. She wasn't just a victim. She was a fighter, even in her fear. The last few entries were short, her handwriting more erratic. November 28th. Feeling so weak today. Sonia changed my pills again. Said the doctor recommended it. I don't remember seeing a doctor. My breath caught. Changed her pills? December 3rd. They are always here now, always watching. I feel like a prisoner. But I won't let them win. I won't let them take you away from me, Zaylee Bean, not in my heart. The final entry was dated just 2 days before she died. It was brief, almost a scrawl. December 5th. Thank heavens I got through to Nora today. She understands. She promised to keep an eye on things if the worst happens. They are watching my calls. I had to be quick. Love you. Nora Fisher. Grandma's oldest, dearest friend. A lifeline. My heart hammered against my ribs. Nora knew. Nora might know more. Nora lived in a cosy little cottage on the other side of town, the kind with a rambling rose garden and a brightly painted front door. I drove there the next morning. Grandma Lucille's diary tucked safely in my bag, its weight a strange comfort. Nora opened the door, her kind eyes, so like Grandma's, widening in surprise. Zaylee, dear, what a surprise! Come in. Her living room was filled with photos. Nora and Grandma Lucille on various holidays, laughing, arms linked. The sight brought a fresh wave of grief, but also a renewed sense of purpose. "Nora," I began, my voice a little shaky, "I need to talk to you about Grandma." She led me to a chintz armchair, bustling off to make tea. When she returned, she sat opposite me, her expression gentle but wary. "I was so sorry to hear about the will, dear. Lucille, she loved you so very much. It just didn't make any sense." "It didn't," I agreed, pulling the diary from my bag. "Nora, Grandma left this. She wrote about you. She said she spoke to you right before—" Nora's eyes filled with tears. She reached for the diary, her hand trembling as she touched the cover. "Oh, my dear Lucille. Yes, she called me. She sounded frantic, frightened." "What did she say?" I urged, leaning forward. "She said Sonia and Melvin were, well, she said they were trying to turn her against you, feeding her awful lies. She said they were controlling her finances, her medication. She was terrified they were going to put her in a home, take everything." Nora's voice was low, pained. "She mentioned trying to see another lawyer, a Mr. Russell, to change things back, to make sure you were taken care of. She said they were making it almost impossible for her to do anything on her own." My breath hitched. "Did she say anything else? About the medication?" Nora frowned, her brow furrowed in concentration. "She did say something about them changing her pills when she argued with them. Said it made her feel fuzzy, confused. Oh, Zaylee, I felt so helpless. I told her I'd do anything I could, but then she was gone." She dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "I tried to call Sonia after to ask, but she was so dismissive. Said Lucille was just confused, as usual." The pieces were clicking into place, forming a sickening mosaic of deceit and cruelty. Just as Nora was writing down Kylan Russell's name and number for me. "Be careful, dear. Lucille said they were very aggressive when they found out she'd contacted him." My phone buzzed. It was Melvin, my father. "Zaylee, honey, where are you? I was worried. Your mother and I, we just want to make sure you're okay." His voice was laden with false concern. "I'm fine," I said, my tone flat. "Listen, I wanted to talk to you about Grandma. There were some misunderstandings towards the end, about your finances. She got a bit muddled, thought you were in some sort of trouble, needed money. We tried to explain, but—" My hand tightened around my phone. He was fishing, trying to see what I knew, what I believed, trying to reinforce their narrative. "Right," I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. "Well, I have to go, Dad." "Okay, sweetheart. Just take care of yourself. We love you. Love." The word felt like ash in my mouth. After I hung up, I flipped through the diary again, my fingers brushing against a small, folded piece of paper tucked into the back sleeve. I hadn't noticed it before. I carefully unfolded it. It was a note, in Grandma's handwriting, the paper tear-stained and crinkled. "Melvin came today. He was so kind, so concerned. He showed me an email from Zaylee. It said she didn't need my help, that she was fine on her own, that I shouldn't worry about her. It said she felt smothered by my attention. It didn't look like her writing, not quite. The words were cold. My heart aches. Did I push her away? Is this my fault? An email? I'd never sent any such email. Never." I felt a wave of nausea. They hadn't just lied to her, they had forged things, created false evidence to break her spirit, to make her doubt the one person in the world she trusted most. The depth of their premeditated cruelty was staggering. This wasn't just about greed. This was about systematically destroying a vulnerable old woman's peace of mind, isolating her, turning her against me, all for money. Nora looked at my face, her own paling. "What is it, dear?" I read her the note. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "That man, that snake, to do that to his own mother." "They forged it, Nora," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "They faked an email from me to convince her I didn't care." The cold rage from the day before was back, solidifying into something hard and resolute. This wasn't just about grief anymore. This was about justice, for Grandma Lucille, and for me. Nora squeezed my hand. "You have to be strong, Zaylee, and you have to be smart. They're dangerous." She tapped the paper with Kylan Russell's details. Lucille trusted him. Maybe he can help. As I left Nora's house, her parting words echoed in my ears. Lucille said they even changed her medication schedule when she argued with them. The casual cruelty of it, the calculated evil, sent a shiver down my spine. They hadn't just stolen her money. They had stolen her autonomy, her peace, and quite possibly her health. The next day, I called Kylan Russell's office. His secretary was polite but firm. Mr. Russell is very busy, and regarding Mrs. Lucille Murray, her estate is being handled by Mr. Gerald Watts. Any inquiries should go through him. But Grandma Lucille consulted Mr. Russell before she passed, I insisted, about changing her will. I have reason to believe there was undue influence. I'm sorry. The secretary cut me off, her voice cooling perceptibly. Mr. Russell cannot discuss confidential client matters. If you have concerns about the existing will, you need to speak with Mr. Watts or seek your own legal counsel. Click. She hung up, stonewalled. It felt like hitting a brick wall. Gerald Watts, the man who couldn't meet my eye. He was either incompetent or in on it. And Kylan Russell, Grandma's plan B, was hiding behind client confidentiality. Meanwhile, Alison wasn't hiding anything. Her social media exploded with her newfound wealth. A gleaming new SUV. My baby, she captioned it, complete with a string of champagne emojis. Shopping bags from designer stores piled high on what used to be Grandma Lucille's antique dining table, now Alison's staging area for hauls. Selfies from expensive restaurants, clinking glasses with her equally shallow friends. Each post was a fresh stab, a blatant, tasteless celebration of her victory. My victory stolen. Grandma's legacy desecrated. The rage simmered, a constant fire in my gut. I started watching them. Not obviously, but I paid attention. I drove past Grandma's house, Alison's house now, more often than I should. I saw Sonia's car there frequently, Melvin's too. They were a united front, a coven of greed. One afternoon, I was parked down the street, hidden by a large oak tree, just needing to feel close to Grandma's presence, even if it was tainted now. Sonia and Alison came out, laughing, arms laden with more shopping bags. As they loaded them into Sonia's car, I strained to hear their conversation. The wind carried snippets. So smoothly, Alison was saying, her voice bright and brittle. Honestly, I was worried for a minute there, with her being so stubborn. Sonia chuckled, a dry, unpleasant sound. Your grandmother always had a flair for the dramatic, but we handled it. Lucky she didn't make a fuss with that other lawyer, though. That could have been messy. Tell me about it, Alison said, rolling her eyes. Imagine if she'd actually signed something with him. Nightmare. My hands clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles were white. That other lawyer. Kylan Russell. They knew. They knew she'd tried to change things. And they'd stopped her. The casual way they discussed it, like they were talking about a minor inconvenience they'd successfully navigated, made me physically sick. I drove away, my mind racing. Gerald Watts. He had to know something, or at least he should have suspected. Grandma Lucille had been his client for years. He knew her, he knew me. How could he have accepted that new will, the one disinheriting me completely, without asking more questions, especially if he knew she'd been consulting another lawyer? Was he just lazy, negligent, or was it something worse? Had they bought his silence, his compliance? The thought made my skin crawl. The legal system, the very thing that was supposed to protect people like Grandma, felt like a tangled, impenetrable web, designed to protect the powerful and the deceitful. I spent hours online, researching elder abuse, undue influence, will contests. The more I read, the more daunting it seemed. It was my word and a dead woman's diary against a signed will, a compliant lawyer, and a family determined to protect their ill-gotten gains. The frustration was immense. I felt so alone, so outmatched. Nora was supportive, a comforting voice on the phone, but she was an elderly woman herself, not equipped to fight this kind of battle. I reread the diary entries about Kylan Russell, searching for any clue, any leverage. Grandma had written, Mr. Russell seemed kind. He listened. He said he'd had cases like this before. He promised to help me draft something quickly. She'd been hopeful. What had changed? What had Sonia and Melvin done to shut him down so effectively? Days turned into a week. Alison's ostentatious displays continued. My parents called a few more times, their voices dripping with that fake sympathy, asking if I was coping, if I needed anything. I kept my answers short, non-committal. I couldn't let them hear the fury in my voice, couldn't let them know I was onto them. Not yet. I was starting to lose hope, the weight of their betrayal pressing down on me, suffocating me. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was just being dramatic. Maybe Grandma had just changed her mind, however unlikely it seemed. Doubt, cold and insidious, began to creep in. Then one evening, as I was scrolling listlessly through my emails, deleting junk, one subject line caught my eye. Lucille Murray. My heart leapt. It was from an anonymous, encrypted email address. I clicked it open, my hands trembling. The message was short, cryptic. I used to work for Kyle and Russell. I overheard things about Lucille Murray's case. Your family played dirty. They threatened him, threatened to ruin his reputation if he helped your grandmother. He caved. But she deserved better. You deserve the truth. Meet me if you want to know more. Coffee shop, corner of Elm and Oak, tomorrow, 3 p.m. Come alone. A jolt like electricity shot through me. Someone else knew, someone on the inside. A tiny, fragile spark of hope reignited in the darkness. The coffee shop on Elm and Oak was bustling. I scanned the faces, my nerves jangling. How would I know them? What if it was a trap? What if Sonia, Melvin, or Alison had somehow found out I was suspicious, and this was their way of... what? Intimidating me further? Then I saw her. A woman in her early 30s, nursing a latte in a quiet corner booth, her eyes flicking towards the door every few seconds. She had an anxious, almost haunted look about her. When our eyes met, she gave a small, hesitant nod. I walked over, my heart thumping. "Are you—" "Angela," she said quietly, gesturing to the seat opposite her. "You must be Zaylee." I slid into the booth. "Thank you for contacting me. I didn't know where to turn." Angela took a shaky breath. "I shouldn't even be here. If Kylan finds out. But what they did to your grandmother, it wasn't right. I typed up the notes from her meetings with him. I heard the phone calls." "What happened?" I asked, leaning in, my voice barely a whisper. "Grandma Lucille said he was going to help her." "He was," Angela confirmed, her gaze darting around the coffee shop. "She came in twice. She was lucid, Zaylee, very clear about what she wanted. She wanted to change her will back to you, ensure you were the primary beneficiary. She wanted to set up a trust, something your parents couldn't touch. Kylan drafted the documents. She was supposed to come in and sign them. But she never did," I said, a knot tightening in my chest. Angela shook her head. "No. Before she could, your mother, Sonia, called the office. She was aggressive. She threatened Kylan, said Lucille was incompetent, suffering from severe dementia, said if he proceeded with any changes to the will, she and your father would file a complaint with the Bar Association, accuse him of taking advantage of a vulnerable senior. They said they had medical reports to prove it." "But Grandma wasn't incompetent," I protested. "Her diary proves it." "I know," Angela said, her voice soft. "Or at least, she wasn't when she saw Kylan. But your mother was very convincing. She faxed over some documents, letters from a doctor. I don't know if they were legitimate, but Kylan got spooked. He has a reputation to protect. He told your grandmother he couldn't proceed without a full psychiatric evaluation, one that her family would have to agree to, which, of course, they wouldn't. It was a perfect catch-22. They created the problem, then used it to block the solution. So they just scared him off. Essentially, they also started intercepting her calls to the office, her letters. Kylan tried to reach out a couple more times, but your mother would always answer, saying Lucille was too unwell or too confused to speak. Eventually, he just dropped it, told himself it was too risky. Angela looked down at her hands. I felt terrible. Lucille was so sweet, so desperate. "Do you have anything?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "Any proof?" Angela reached into her oversized tote bag and pulled out a thin manila folder. She slid it across the table. These are copies. Drafts of the will Kylan prepared for her, the one naming you. Notes from their meetings. My own contemporaneous notes from some of those calls with your mother. It's not the signed document, obviously, but it shows her intent. It shows what they did to stop her. I opened the folder, my hands trembling. There it was, in black and white. Last will and testament of Lucille Murray. And my name, Zaylee, listed as the primary beneficiary. Tears welled in my eyes. This was what Grandma wanted. This was what they stole. There's something else, Angela said, her voice even lower. A few days before Lucille's health really took a nosedive, your mother, Sonia, came into the office. Not Kylan's, but she was in the same building, seeing a different lawyer. I overheard her talking in the hallway. She'd just obtained power of attorney over Lucille. My blood ran cold. Power of attorney? Yes, under very questionable circumstances, from what I gathered. She was boasting about how it gave her complete control, how she could now manage Lucille's affairs properly, access all her accounts. She said something about Lucille being difficult and this being the only way to protect her assets. Angela met my gaze. It was just days before Lucille stopped being able to communicate, according to what Kylan later heard. And, in the diary, Grandma wrote about it. I flipped through the diary pages frantically until I found the entry. November 20th. Sonia has papers. She made me sign. I was so tired. Said it was just to help with bills. I didn't understand all the words. My head hurt. They'd gotten her to sign away her control when she was at her most vulnerable. Then, armed with that POA, they could block Kylan, control her money, everything. Thank you, Angela, I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. You have no idea what this means. Just be careful, Zaylee, she said, her eyes filled with genuine concern. They're ruthless. They won't hesitate to crush anyone who gets in their way. I gathered the papers, my mind reeling, but also filled with a new, steely resolve. This was it. This was the ammunition I needed. That evening, I was spread out on my living room floor, the diary, Angela's documents, Nora's notes, trying to piece it all together to build a timeline. The doorbell rang. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peered through the peephole. Alison. My heart leapt into my throat. I quickly, clumsily tried to gather the papers, shoving them under a cushion just as she called out, Zaylee, are you in there? I saw your light. I opened the door a crack. Alison, what do you want? She pushed the door open wider, stepping inside, her eyes immediately scanning my small apartment. Just checking on my little sister. You've been so quiet. We're all worried about you. Her gaze landed on the edge of a paper peeking out from under the cushion. Her eyes narrowed. What are you doing with all that, Zaylee? Still dwelling on poor Grandma? Her voice was deceptively casual, but there was a new, sharp glint in her eyes. A glint of suspicion. Just some old papers, I said, trying to sound nonchalant, my heart hammering. I casually sat on the sofa, covering the revealing edge of the document with my leg. Sorting through things. You know? Alison's eyes lingered on the cushion for a moment too long. Right, she said, her tone unconvinced. Well, Mom and Dad were thinking, maybe you're not coping too well with all this. Grief can do funny things to people. Make them obsessive. Obsessive? I repeated, my voice tight. Is that what they think? They're just concerned, Zaylee, Alison said, wandering around my small living room, picking things up, putting them down. Her gaze felt like a violation. They think you might need some help. Maybe talk to someone, professionally. The implication was clear. They were trying to discredit me before I could even make a move. If I was unstable, no one would believe anything I said. I'm perfectly fine, Alison, I said, my voice colder than I intended. You don't need to worry about me. She gave a little shrug, a smirk playing on her lips. If you say so. Anyway, Mom wanted me to tell you. We're planning a little something for Grandma. A celebration of life luncheon, in 2 weeks, at the country club. Just a nice way for everyone to remember her. She paused, her eyes glinting. You will come, won't you? It would mean so much to the family. A celebration of life. The hypocrisy was astounding. They were going to use Grandma Lucille's memory to further cement their image as the grieving, respectable family, while I, the one who truly loved her, was being painted as unhinged. But as Alison spoke, a different thought sparked in my mind. A public gathering. All their friends, their social circle, extended family, all in one place. It was perfect. Of course, I said, forcing a small, sad smile. I wouldn't miss it. Alison looked surprised, then pleased. Good. I'll let Mum know. She lingered for another moment, her eyes still flicking around the room before finally leaving. The moment the door closed behind her, I let out a shaky breath. They knew, or at least they suspected I was digging. The concerned visit, the suggestion I needed help, it was a warning shot. My apartment suddenly felt unsafe, exposed. What if they tried to search it while I was out? What if they found the diary, Angela's papers? I couldn't risk it. I called Nora. Nora, can I come over? I need to ask you a huge favour, and I need to tell you what I found. Nora, bless her heart, didn't hesitate. Of course, dear. Any time. I packed the diary, Angela's documents, every scrap of paper, into a secure box. At Nora's, I laid it all out for her. Her gasp when she saw the draft, will from Kylan Russell, her quiet fury as I recounted Angela's story about the POA and the threats, mirrored my own. They have to be stopped, Zaylee, Nora said, her voice firm, her gentle eyes now steely. Lucille deserves justice. I know, I said. And I think I know how. They're planning a celebration of life luncheon in 2 weeks. Nora's eyebrows shot up. The audacity. Exactly. But it's the perfect stage. Everyone will be there. I took a deep breath. Nora, I need to keep these documents safe. Can I leave them here? Of course, dear. They'll be safer here than anywhere. She patted my hand. What's your plan? Over the next few days, I started making discreet calls. First to Uncle Lincoln, Sonia's brother. He'd always been fond of Grandma Lucille, and, while he wasn't close to Sonia, he valued family appearances. Uncle Lincoln, I said, keeping my voice calm. Sonia and Melvin are hosting a luncheon for Grandma. I know it's short notice, but it would mean a lot if you could be there. I have something important I need to share. About Grandma, about her true wishes. There was a pause. Her true wishes, Zaylee? What do you mean? I can't explain over the phone, Uncle Lincoln, but it's important. For Grandma's memory. He sounded intrigued, concerned. All right, Zaylee, I'll be there. I made similar calls to a few of Grandma Lucille's oldest friends, people I knew Sonia and Melvin might not think to invite, or might hope wouldn't come. Each conversation was carefully worded, hinting at a truth that needed to be revealed. The days leading up to the luncheon were a blur of anxiety and a strange, terrifying calm. I felt like I was walking a tightrope. My parents called a couple more times, their voices overly solicitous. Alison sent a text. Looking forward to seeing you at the luncheon. Mum picked out a lovely photo of Grandma for the display. Then 3 days before the event, I got a shock. I was coming home from work and I saw a man sitting in an unfamiliar car parked down the street, watching my building. He looked away quickly when I glanced at him, but not before I saw the notebook and pen in his lap. My blood ran cold. Later that evening, I accidentally knocked over the recycling bin by the mailboxes in my apartment lobby. As I was picking up the scattered envelopes and junk mail, I saw it. A discarded, slightly crumpled envelope addressed to a generic occupant at my address, but with a typed return address for a local private investigations firm. My heart leaped into my throat. I quickly pocketed it. Upstairs, with trembling hands, I steamed it open. It was a brief, typed report. Subject, Zaylee S. Daily Movements Logged. Met with Nora F., known associate of deceased, multiple times. Also met with unidentified female, approx 30s, at Elm St. Coffee. See attached photo. Blurry. Subject appears to be building some kind of case or gathering information. Extreme caution advised regarding upcoming family event. Subject may be planning a disruption. They had hired a PI. They were that scared, that determined to control the narrative. The extreme caution advised part sent a shiver down my spine. but it also solidified my resolve. They were panicking. They knew I was close. The luncheon was set. The stage was ready. I felt a terrifying, thrilling sense of inevitability. There was no turning back now. The country club ballroom was sickeningly opulent. Crystal chandeliers dripped from the ceiling, and tables were laden with elaborate floral arrangements. Lilies, of course, Sonia's favourite, not Grandma's. A large, softly lit portrait of Grandma Lucille stood on an easel near the entrance, a gentle, smiling image that felt like a cruel mockery. Sonia, Melvin, and Alison greeted guests at the door, their faces masks of perfect, sombre grief. Sonia, in a severe black dress, dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief that looked suspiciously dry. Melvin shook hands, murmuring platitudes about Lucille's long and happy life. Alison, her voice hushed and reverent, guided people to their seats, her new diamond bracelet catching the light. They were actors in their own disgusting play. I found Nora, who gave my hand a reassuring squeeze. Uncle Lincoln arrived, looking serious, and gave me a curt nod. A few of Grandma's old friends I'd invited were scattered amongst the tables, their presence a small comfort. The luncheon began. The food was expensive, tasteless. The conversation was muted, polite. Then came the speeches. Melvin went first, his voice thick with feigned emotion as he spoke of Lucille's kindness and generosity. Sonia followed, her tribute focusing on how peaceful Lucille's final days were, how surrounded by love she had been. Alison, her voice trembling artfully, spoke of her precious grandma and how she would cherish her memory always while managing her beloved estate. It was a masterclass in manipulative theatre. When they finished, a polite smattering of applause filled the room. Sonia smiled, a picture of bereaved dignity. Then I stood up. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced them to hold me. "Excuse me," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "If I could just say a few words?" All eyes turned to me. Sonia's smile faltered. Melvin looked uneasy. Alison's eyes narrowed. "Of course, Zaylee dear," Sonia said, her voice tight. "How lovely." I walked to the small podium, the diary clutched in my hand. My heart was a wild bird beating against my ribs. "Thank you," I began, my voice carrying through the suddenly silent room. "Like all of you, I loved my grandmother Lucille very much. She was an incredible woman, strong, witty, and fiercely loving. She taught me so much about life, about kindness, about resilience." I paused, letting my gaze sweep over my family. They were starting to look uncomfortable, but still trying to maintain their composure. I had lulled them into a false sense of security. Then my tone shifted. The warmth drained from my voice, replaced by a cold, hard edge. My grandmother was also a woman of great strength and clarity, even in her final months. She was not the confused, forgetful woman some would have you believe. And she left behind more than just memories. She left her voice. I held up the diary. This is my grandmother's journal, written in her own hand, in the last weeks of her life. Sonia's face went white. Melvin's jaw dropped. Alison froze, her fork clattering onto her plate. A shocked murmur rippled through the room. "In these pages," I continued, my voice clear and unwavering, "Lucille didn't write about peace and love. She wrote about fear. She wrote about being isolated, manipulated, and lied to by her own family." I opened the diary. October 12th. Sonia came today. She said Zaylee called, upset about having to help me with my groceries. Said Zaylee told her I was becoming a burden. A lie. A cruel, calculated lie. October 19th. Melvin was here. He said Zaylee was asking about my finances, wondering when she'd get her inheritance. Another lie, designed to break her heart. October 25th. Alison visited. She told me Zaylee was planning a long trip abroad, wouldn't be around to help anymore. Said Zaylee thought I should move into a home. More lies to make her feel abandoned. Sonia shot to her feet. "Zaylee, this is outrageous! How dare you—" "Sit down, Sonia," I said, my voice like ice. "You'll have your turn." To my surprise, she sank back into her chair, her face a mask of fury. I read on, detailing the confiscated phone, the forged email Melvin had shown Grandma, the one where I supposedly rejected her help and called her smothering. I read about her fear, her attempts to contact Kylan Russell, her desperation. My grandmother wrote, "Thank heavens I got through to Nora today. She understands." I looked at Nora. "Nora, would you confirm that Grandma Lucille called you, distressed and afraid of what her family was doing?" Nora stood, her voice trembling but clear. "Yes, Lucille called me. She was terrified. She said Sonia, Melvin and Alison were trying to control everything, telling her horrible things about Zaylee. She said they were changing her medication when she argued. She was not confused. She was scared." Nora sat down, glaring at my family. The room was in stunned silence. Uncle Lincoln was staring at Sonia, his face like thunder. "But they didn't stop there," I said, my voice ringing with accusation. I held up the copies of Angela's documents. "This is a draft will prepared by Kylan Russell, the lawyer my grandmother secretly consulted. A will that left her estate to me, as she always intended. But she never got to sign it, because Sonia and Melvin threatened Mr. Russell. They told him they'd destroy his career if he helped her." I then revealed the power of attorney Sonia had obtained. Grandma wrote, "Sonia has papers. She made me sign. I was so tired." They got her signature when she was vulnerable, then used that POA to block Mr. Russell and gain full control of her finances, just days before her health mysteriously and rapidly declined. Sonia was sputtering. "Lies! All lies! She's unstable! Grieving!" Melvin looked like he was about to faint. His face was a ghastly shade of grey. Alison jumped up. "She's crazy! Grandma loved us! She wanted me to have everything! Zaylee was always jealous!" Her voice cracked, betraying her panic. I turned to them, my eyes blazing. "Greed, Sonia. That's what drove you. You couldn't stand the thought of me inheriting. And you, Melvin, you weren't just weak. You were a willing, malicious participant in her cruelty. You showed her that forged email. You helped break her heart. And Alison, you lapped it all up, didn't you? So entitled, so smug. You didn't care who you hurt as long as you got what you wanted." The silence in the room was absolute, heavy with disgust and shock. Guests were staring at my family with open horror. I took a deep, steadying breath. "You thought you silenced her? You thought you erased me? But Lucille Murray was smarter and stronger than you ever gave her credit for. And so am I." I let that sink in for a moment, then delivered the final blow. "I've already spoken to a new lawyer. We're contesting the will on grounds of undue influence and financial elder abuse. And Adult Protective Services has received a full copy of this diary and all my evidence." I looked directly at Sonia, then Melvin, then Alison, their faces a mixture of terror and disbelief. "Enjoy your meal," I said, my voice calm, almost serene. "It might be the last comfortable one you have for a long, long time." The aftermath of the luncheon was pure, unadulterated chaos. People didn't just leave. They fled, as if escaping a burning building. Whispers turned into shocked exclamations, then outright condemnation. Uncle Lincoln was one of the last to approach me, his face grim. "Zaylee," he said, his voice heavy. I had no idea. Sonia, Melvin, I'm so sorry." He looked utterly ashamed of his sister. "It's not your fault, Uncle Lincoln," I said, though the words felt hollow. Sonia, Melvin and Alison were left sitting alone at their table, the lavish food untouched, their carefully constructed world imploding around them. Sonia was ashen-faced, finally speechless. Melvin looked like he'd aged 10 years in an hour. Alison was openly weeping, mascara streaking her face, her designer dress suddenly looking like a costume for a tragedy. The legal battle kicked off almost immediately. My new lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Ms. Davies, was a pit bull. Armed with Grandma Lucille's diary, Angela's documents, Nora's testimony, and the PI's report, which ironically helped prove their paranoia and attempts to monitor me, she went to work. The first victory was an emergency injunction freezing all of Grandma Lucille's assets. Alison's new SUV was repossessed right out of the country club parking lot, a small, petty satisfaction I allowed myself to enjoy. Her shopping sprees came to an abrupt halt. The smugness was wiped clean from her face, replaced by bewildered panic. Adult Protective Services launched their investigation. Social workers interviewed Sonia and Melvin. Their friends, the ones who had witnessed the takedown at the luncheon, suddenly weren't returning their calls. Their carefully curated social standing crumbled like a sandcastle in a tsunami. The depositions were brutal. Sonia tried to bluster and deny, but Ms. Davies dismantled her lies piece by piece, using Grandma's own words from the diary. "Mrs. Spencer, your mother wrote on October 12th that you told her Zaley called her a burden. Did Zaley in fact call your mother a burden?" Sonia's denial sounded increasingly desperate and pathetic. Melvin completely fell apart on the stand. Faced with the forged email, confronted with his own mother's heartbroken words about his deceit, he broke down, admitting to misunderstandings and poor judgment, trying to shift the blame to Sonia. It was a pathetic display. Alison, when questioned about her sudden inheritance and her knowledge of her parents' actions, mostly cried and claimed she didn't know and just trusted her parents. It didn't play well. The fight was ugly, draining. There were days I wanted to give up, to just walk away from the toxicity, but then I'd read a passage from Grandma's diary, her voice clear and loving, and my resolve would harden again. I owed her this. It wasn't about the money, not really. Miss Davies was clear that getting the entire estate back would be a long, drawn-out process, potentially years. But what mattered was the truth, the accountability. And accountability came. The court eventually ruled that Grandma Lucille's will had indeed been executed under undue influence. The POA Sonia had wielded was invalidated. While criminal charges for elder abuse were harder to prove to a conviction standard, the civil findings were damning. Their reputations were in tatters. They were forced into a settlement that saw a significant portion of Grandma's estate, including the house, returned to a trust managed by an independent executor, with me as the rightful primary beneficiary, as per Kylan Russell's draft will. Sonia and Melvin had to sell their own large house to cover their legal fees and the settlement. They downsized to a cramped apartment, the silence between them reportedly deafening. Alison, stripped of her unearned wealth and social status, had to get a real job for the first time in her life. The new SUV and designer bags were long gone. I didn't get everything back immediately, and that was okay. The victory wasn't in the dollars and cents. It was in seeing their empire of lies exposed. It was in knowing that Grandma Lucille's true wishes were finally, in some measure, honoured. With the first distribution from the trust, I set up a small foundation in Grandma Lucille's name, dedicated to advocating for elder rights and supporting victims of financial abuse. Nora, beaming, agreed to be on the board. Uncle Lincoln, trying to make amends, made the first substantial donation. I still have Grandma's diary, of course. It sits on my bedside table. Sometimes I open it and read her words, not with anger anymore, but with a deep, abiding love and a sense of peace. Her voice, which they tried so hard to silence, had been the key to unlocking the truth. The karma of it all was potent. My family, who had schemed to leave me with nothing, ended up losing everything that truly mattered to them: their reputation, their wealth, their comfortable lives, and any shred of familial respect. They had sown deceit and reaped desolation. I was scarred, no doubt. The betrayal cut deep, and those wounds would take time to fully heal. But I was also free. Free from their manipulations, free to build my life on my own terms, a life that honoured the strong, loving woman who had raised me. They tried to write me out of Grandma's story, to erase my place in her heart and her legacy. But in the end, I was the one who got to write their final chapter, and it was a chapter they truly, unequivocally deserved. Grandma Lucille, I think, would have smiled. She might have even winked.